Hey everyone! For today's new experience, I'm going to be reading a short story, kind of like an audiobook sort of thing. It's BLIT by David Langford. It's always been one of my personal favorite short stories. It tells about the sort of uh, possible future. It tells a lot about how if there's an easy way to hurt people or there's a really strong discovery, that can do a lot of damage, it's instantly and very, very quickly going to be used for nefarious deeds. So bear with me. I might stutter. I might have a drink of my beer. But this is something I always wanted to do. And we're going to get through this. Thanks. BLIT, a short story by David Langford. It was like being caught halfway through a flashy film dissolve. The goggles broke up the dim street, split and reshuffled it along diagonal lines. A glowing kebabs sign was transposed onto the tapestry they called shatter. Safest to keep the goggles on, Robbo had decided. Even in the flickering electric half-light before dawn, you never knew what you might see. Just his luck if the stencil jumped from under his arm and unrolled itself before his eyes as he scrabbled for it on the pavement. That would be a good place. Behind the 34, shattered 34, bus stop. This was their part of town. The women flocked there each morning, twittering in their seats like bright alien canaries. A good place, by a boarded-up shop window thick with fly-posted gig announcements. Robbo scanned the street for movement, glanced at his own hand to be reassured by a blurred spaghetti of fingers. Guaranteed Army issue goggles. The group had friends in funny places. But they said the eye eventually adjusts. One day something clicks, and clear outlines jump at you. He flinched as the thick plastic unrolled, and the nervy moment was past. His left hand pressed the stencil against the tattered poster, while in his right, the spray can hissed. The Swedish heady smell of car touch-up paint made it all seem oddly distant from an act of terrorism. He'd found he'd been careless, easy in this false twilight and through those lenses. There were tacky patches on his fingers as he re-rolled the parrot. A few hours on, in thick morning light, the brown women would be playing the wink game. Jesus, how long since he'd been a kid and played that? Must be 5 years. The one who drawn the murder card caught your eye and winked, and you had to die with lots of spasms and overacting. To survive, you needed to spot the murderer first and get in with an accusation, or at least know where not to look. It was cold. Time to move on, to pick another place. Goggles or no shatter goggles. He didn't look back at the image of the parrot. It might wink. Secret. Basilisk. Distribution. UK list BIV only. So called because its outline, when processed for non-hazardous viewing, is generally considered to resemble that of a bird. The processed, anamorphically elongated partial image appears in Appendix 3 of this report, Part A3II. The stated page of this must not be viewed through any form of cylindrical lens. Prolonged viewing is strongly disrecommended. Please read page A3I before proceeding. 2-6. This first example of the Berryman logical image technique, hence the usual acronym BLIT, evolved from AI work at the Cambridge 4 supercomputer facility, now discontinued. V. Berryman and C.M. Turner hypothesized that pattern recognition programs of sufficient complexity might be vulnerable to Gödelian shock input in the form of data incompatible with internal representation. Berryman went further and suggested that the existence of such a potential input was a logical necessity. 2-18. Details of the Berryman-Turner BLIT construction algorithms are not available at this classification level. Details of the eventual security breach at Cambridge 4 are neither available nor fully known. Details of Cambridge 4 casualty figures are, for the time being, reserved. Sub judice. Ira got a hold of it somehow, Mac had said. The provost. We do some of our shopping in the same places, Jelly and like that. Slipped us a copy, they did. The cardboard tube in Rubbo's hand had suddenly felt 10 times as heavy. He'd expected a map. A group plan of action, maybe a blueprint of some nasty plan in the Sikh temple up in Victoria Street. You mean it works? Fucking right, I tried it. A volunteer. He grinned. Just grinned and winked. Listen, this is poison stuff. Wear the goggles around it. If you fuck up and get a clear squint at even a bit of the parrot, this is what you do. They told me. Shut yourself up with a bottle of vodka and knock the whole lot back. Decontamination scrubs your short-term visual memory. Something like that. Jesus, what about the provost? If this fairy story's got teeth, why haven't they... Robo had trailed off into a vague waving gesture that failed to conjure up a paper neutron bomb. Mac's smile had widened into an assault course of brown, jagged teeth, as it did when he talked about a major group action. Maybe they don't fancy new ideas, but could be they're biding their time for a big one. Even thought about hijacking a TV... Sorry. Ever thought about hijacking a TV station just for an hour? Don't things like that. It'll be bad for you. Dead TV screens watched him from another cracked shop window, a dump that also rented Hindi videotapes. That settled it for them. Why couldn't the buggers just learn English? The group would give them the hint. The parrot stencil was already in position. The can sliding out of his pocket. Fastest draw in the West. At school, Robbo had never won a fight. Had always been beaten down to cringing tears. He learned good, safe, satisfying ways of hitting back. AA group booby trap work was the best of all, a regular and addictive thrill. This had better be the last for now, last but one. 20 would be a good round number, but the sky seemed to be lightening up its overlaid sodium-stained lights. If he went around Alma Street way, he could hit the Marquis of Granby, where everyone said the local gays hang out, taking over a good old pub, bent as corkscrews and not even ashamed of it. Give you AIDS as soon as look at you, the bastards. Right in the middle of their glazed front door then, glaring red and a foot high. The light hit him like a mailed fist. The goggles parsed it into bright, hurtful bars. Robbo spun half around, trying to shield his eyes with the heavy, flapping something in his left hand. The heavy something had a big, irregular hole in it. Torchlight blared through, and moving quickly closer, there was a voice. Like to tell me what you're... As the beam dipped and the voice trailed off, he saw the shivered outline of a police helmet through that of the parrot. Behind, jagged after images, a face came into view, an Asian face as he might have expected this end of town. The eyes stared blindly. The mouth worked. Robbo had read old murder hit mysteries where the unmarked body wore an inexplicable expression of shock and dread. A warm corpse slumped into him, its momentum carrying them both through a window which dissolved in tinkling shards. It wasn't supposed to be like this. The bomb wasn't supposed to go off until you were 6 miles away. Somewhere there was the broken outline of a second helmet. Secret. Basilisk. Independently discovered by at least 2 late amateurs of computer graphics, the fractal star is generated by a relatively simple iteration procedure which determines whether any point in 2-dimensional space, the complex field, does or does not belong to his domain. This algorithm is now classified. 3-3. The fractal star does not exhibit BLIT properties in its macrostructure. The overall appearance may be viewed. See Appendix 3, page A3, Part 3. This property allowed the star to be widely disseminated via a popular computer magazine, a version of the algorithm being printed under the heading Fun with Graphics. Unfortunately, the accompanying text suggested that users rewrite the software to zoom in on aspects of the domain's visually appearing fractal microstructure. In several zones of the complex field, this can produce BLIT effects when the resulting fine detail is displayed on a computer monitor of better than a 600 by 300 pixels resolution. 3-4. Approximately 4% of the magazine's 115,000 readers discovered and displayed BLIT patterns latent within the fractal star. In most cases, other members of family units and or emergency services inadvertently became viewers while investigating the casualty or casualties. Total figures are difficult to ascertain, but to a first order of approximation. Tape the envelope all around, that's it, and write danger, do not open, in ruddy big letters. Both sides, right? So you know all about it. There have been bulletins. The squatties picked up 50 in that Belfast raid. Lead Sid got another. Some bastard just like this one. I tell you, this job's been a shambles for years, and now it's a fucking disaster. These constables and a sergeant gone, 3 of them. Picking up a sporty little shit like you could knock flying just by spitting at him. Robbo hurt in a variety of places, but kept still and quiet, eyes shut, slumped on the hard bench where ungentle hands had dropped him. He told them every place he'd hit, but they'd kept on hurting him. It wasn't fair. He felt the draft of an opening door. Photo ID positive, sir. Robert Charles Bitton, 19, 2 previous for criminal damage, suspected link Albion Action Group. Nothing much else on the printout. I suppose it makes sense. Vicious sods. Run into them yet, Jimmy? Nearest thing we've got here to the Ku Klux fucking Klan. This one will be out of circulation for a good long while. Jimmy, you haven't been keeping up to date with this BLIT stuff, have you? It's the same as that fucking nightmare with the kids and their home computers. God knows how much longer they can keep the lid on. It's going to get us all sooner or later. Look, we're going to have 4 PMs with cause of death unknown. Immediate cause heart failure. And have I really got to spell it out for you? Oh. The only evidence is that sodding is in that sodding envelope. A real court clearer, huh? I remember when they nicked those international phone fiddlers way back when, and all we could do for them was illegal use of electricity to the value of 60p. They didn't have a phone hacker law those days. We haven't got a brain hacker law now. You mean we clean up after the little bastard, give him a nice room for what's left for the night, and that's it? Ah. The tone of the voice implied that something extra was going on. A gesture, a finger laid significantly alongside his nose, a wink. Car 3 cleans up. They've got the eye safety kit, for what it's worth. We show young master urban terrorism to his palatial quarters, taking the pretty way, of course, and then Jimmy, when the new shift arrives, we hold a wake for our recently departed mates. No joking. It's in the last bulletin. You'll really appreciate hearing why. Robbo braced himself as the hands got a fresh grip on him. The outlook sounded almost promising. Secret. Basilisk. Informational analysis adopts a somewhat purist mathematical viewpoint whereby blits are considered to encode Gödelian spoilers, implicit programs which the human equipment cannot safely run. In his final paper, Berryman argued that although metalogical safety devices permit the assimilation and safe recognition of self-referential loops, this sentence is false, for example, the graphic analogs of subtler vicious circles might evade protective verbal analysis by striking directly through the visual cortex. This may not be consistent with the observed effects of the reader BLIT discussed in section 7, The reader BLIT discussed in Section 7, unusual not merely because its incapacitation of cortical activity is temporary, albeit with some observed permanent damage in Army volunteers, but also because its effects are specific to those literate in English and English-like alphabets. There may, in addition, be a logical inconsistency with the considerations developed in Section 12. Section 10.18. Goet's post facto biochemical counter-hypothesis was regarded as less drastic. The proposes that memotoxins might be formed in the brain by electrochemical activity associated with the storage of certain patterns of data. Although attractive, the hypothesis has yet to be. Section 12-4. The present situation resembles that of the explosion in particle physics. Not merely new species of BLIT, but entire related families continue to emerge, as summarized in Appendix A2. One controversial interpretation invoked the Sheldrake theory of morphic resonance. It might be simpler to conclude that multiple simultaneous emergence of the BLIT concept was inevitable at the stage of AI research would have been reached. The losses amongst leading theorists, in particular those with marked powers of mathematical visualization, constitute a major hindrance to further understanding. The cell was white-tiled to shoulder height, glossily white-painted as it went on and up and up. Its reek of disinfectant felt like steel wool up the nose, down the throat. In a vague spirit of getting the most from the amenities, Robbo patronized the white china toilet and scrubbed his hands futilely in the basin. Cold water couldn't shift those red acrylic stains that had passed. Before lying down to wait. They couldn't touch him, really. They might fine him on some silly vandalism charge, and he might accidentally fall down a few more flights of stairs before reaching the magistrate's court. Even now, the hard bunk caught him in all sorts of puffy, bruised places. But in the long run, he was okay. They knew that. But they hadn't seemed bothered, had they? He had a flash then, and them smiling. We aren't pressing charges, and this way, sir, and if you could just pick up your property, a door would open and guests would be waiting there for him to see. Silly. They wouldn't. But suppose. Time passed. The terminus was easy to imagine. He'd seen it so often through the shatter lenses, a long bird profile sliced at an angle and jaggedly reassembled. Parrot salami. An outline against walls and windows and posters as a solid shape in glistening red that lost its color to orange sodium glare and outline again as a dead man's broken eyes met his. It seemed to hover there behind his closed eyeballs. He opened them and stared at the far-off ceiling, spattered with nameless blobs and blots and the efforts of past occupants. If you imagine joining the dots, images began to construct themselves, just as unconvincing as zodiac patterns. After a time, one image in particular threatened to achieve clear focus. He bit through his lip, took refuge in a brief whiteout of pain. It was in him. They knew. Even with protection, he'd looked too long, from too many angles into the abyss. He was infected. Robbo found himself battering at the heavy metal door, bloodying his hands, useless. Because just as there was no crime he could have committed, there was no good medical reason why unfriendly police should offer him a massive memory-clouding dose of alcohol. Flat on the bunk again, he ran for his life. The parrot stalked him through the gray hours of morning, smoothing its fractal feathers, shuffling itself slowly into clarity as though at the end of a flashy film dissolve, until at last his mind's eye had to acknowledge a shape, a wink. Hope you guys liked it.